What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. Hump Day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday and whatever other insanity is going to be happening this coming weekend. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in with your news. And just to bring you all up to date, we are in the middle of the upgrade to the server for whatreallyhappened.com, and we're in the period of time where DNS is propagating out the new IP. Anything you're posting today on the old site will not be preserved. You'll have to repost it when you start seeing the new site, and there'll be an announcement when it becomes visible. I guess because we're here in Hawaii, the new DNS hasn't come on out here. I can't even see if the new site is actually running or not. And there have been all kinds of problems. I was told it would be a smooth transfer. It would look just like I had before. No, it was not. And I spent all morning getting FTP and Secure Shell and all these other things up and running on the new machine. So it's just taking a lot more time. And obviously that's time away from show prep and actually posting to the site. Plus it cost me about $400 for the upgrade, which I didn't ask for. It was forced on me because the hosting company wanted to move to new machines that do not have the Spectre and Meltdown bugs. So here, we're going to give you an upgrade, but you got to pay for it. And I still have to pay for the hosting service for next month as well. So it's insanity. It's just always solving the same problems over and over again. I got to tell you, I'm feeling very, very frustrated this morning by all of this nonsense here. Okay, let's get. I've had my gripe session here. Let's get into some real news. Let's go on back to last Saturday and that missile alert. And some interesting things have emerged, and I'm having a rethink about what's going on because of the fact they had one of these in Japan just a couple of days later. Okay. First of all, a lot of people are making a big deal that NBC News had a crew inside the emergency command center that sent that Hawaii missile alert. Now, they're trying to make it look like they were just there just before it happened, but actually, if you look at the video, there's a clock on the back wall, world times around the world, and there's obviously one for Honolulu. And if you look at it, it says 13 and change, meaning it's actually just after 1 in the afternoon on Friday. So they weren't actually there just before it. And another photo has come on out showing that these bozos in the command center had the passwords for some of these machines on Post-it notes posted right on the monitor, which is a big security no-no. And, of course, the Emergency Management Center is saying, well, it's a password to a system that isn't being used anymore, but still it makes it look like they're really not taking cybersecurity very seriously. And possibly if their EMS system is hooked to the Internet, which it has to be, I would think, to get some of these messages out, to the phones and to the television system, somebody could conceivably hack on in. Now, there's a bunch of people out there still posting this idea that there really was a missile attack, that it was shot down, or it simply malfunctioned and fell into the ocean, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going for that one here. But I'll tell you there's another theory that I think makes sense of both the Hawaii and Japan false alarms, and especially the fact that it took 38 minutes for the Hawaii alert to be officially recalled through the same system. And I think it was a test, not of the emergency management system, but of how people were going to react when they got that alert. You know, before there's a missile alert across the entire United States of America, let's stage one in Hawaii, make it look like it was a false alarm and a mistake after the fact, but just see how many people really panicked and what they did. And they did it here, and they did it in Japan, and that right now is looking like the most likely theory to me. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mr. Mike, can you hear me?
I hear you just fine.
Cool. This may tie into your little to missile crisis in Japan and as well as in Hawaii. H.R. McMaster's will be receiving his 4th star pretty soon, and after he does, he's going to be shuffled over to the Korean Peninsula for upcoming activities. That word "upcoming activities" I find to be very, very interesting.
Yes, especially if it's being commanded by a 4-star.
Absolutely. I mean, and this came from Roger Stone maybe a half an hour ago. So I wanted to, wondering if this ties into there's going to be, and we're going to have a war with North Korea. And like you said, they're testing to make sure everything, is up and running, up to par. And I was also wondering, too, you said a test. Could it also be a test on how the public reacted?
Well, that was what I just got done saying. And the fact that they issued this alert to see how the public would react tells us that somebody somewhere is seriously thinking this is really going to happen, and they want to be prepared for how the public will react to this.
Yeah, and I think, with Roger Stone laying that information down earlier, McMaster's getting a 4-star and then being pushed off to the Korean Peninsula for upcoming activities. Also, they're trying to put Condoleezza Rice back in the White House. They're going to try.
Oh, boy, this is looking very, very serious indeed. Okay, well, thank you for that update. That is interesting information.
Well, you have a great day. And I was just, trying to put a narrative down for you and giving you a heads up. I mean, but thank you for your time. You and Miss Claire, be safe. Love you guys, and be careful.
Well, we'll do our best. Obviously, if there is a war and North Korea succeeds in getting a nuclear missile over here, we're not in a position to really be able to do all that much about it. But obviously, we're going to develop a contingency plan to be able to basically get out of the house and get someplace safe as soon as the alert comes in. But again, I'm thinking that it wasn't an accident, that they were testing how the public would react in both Hawaii and Japan. And that means, yeah, they're getting ready to actually let this thing go. That's pretty upsetting. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Now, if you were watching Fox News this morning, you would think there was absolutely nothing going on anywhere in the world because they've spent all morning on this ceremony in the Capitol awarding Bob Dole the Congressional Gold Medal. And everybody's there. Trump is there. Pence is there. All these senators, and they're getting up there and saying all kinds of wonderful things about Bob Dole. It's not being given as much coverage on the other news networks. But they do like to honor themselves, don't they? They just think they so deserve it. And I'm not sure what PR value this has for it, but they are running this just constantly. Now, apparently, Senator Jeff Flake came on out and delivered a second anti-Trump speech on the Senate floor. And it was only attended by 2 other senators, both of whom are Democrats. Well, probably most of the senators are over, at Bob Dole's little soap opera over there. I cannot believe that people are still talking about Oprah Winfrey for president. And I find it so ironic that the same liberal Democrats who attacked Donald Trump as being just a billionaire reality TV star have all of a sudden decided their favorite candidate for 2020 is a billionaire reality TV star. The polling, however, is showing that she really has got a long way to go if she decides to step on in, because apparently Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are currently outpolling her. And let's see, we have Joe Biden, 54 to 31, if he's running against Oprah. And Bernie Sanders leads Oprah Winfrey 46 to 37%. So those are the numbers out there. Now, apparently, soap opera star and Calvin Klein underwear model Antonio Sabato Jr., he's a candidate for Congress in California, and he's apparently under fire for participating in a movie role that shows him simulating sex with a man and appearing nude, both of which critics and rivals say disqualify him from representing the Republican Party. Well, this triggered a flashback. Some years ago in Italy, there was a porn star named Cicciolina, and she ran for the Italian parliament. And she'd go on TV and she'd flash the audience and say, vote for me, and she actually won. And so we seem to have deteriorated to the same state as Italy in terms of our politics. Let's take some more phone calls. Kathleen in Paris, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I was thinking about these two false alarms, one in Hawaii, and the perceived origin of them. Are we told that it's North Korea should have sent them?
No, the official story is in both cases it was just a simple mistake.
Oh. I'm just thinking, though, that in the mind of the people, the origin of the attack would have, if it was real,
yes,
would have been from North Korea.
Had there been any kind of an explosion anywhere, I'm sure that North Korea would have gotten the blame for it.
So psychologically, I'm thinking that, they're softening people up to be looking askance at North Korea.
Well, it could be interesting that the reason they had the test here in Hawaii and the test in Japan is they're actually planning a false flag attack, and they wanted to see how long they were going to have to wait to let everybody get to safety before they set off a huge explosion. And they don't want to kill any more people than they actually have to. So there's a frightening scenario.
Yeah. One more thing that I heard about this, and is the one that you've discounted, but it's that there really was a missile, and that it was shot down. And the surprise that I heard this from Dave Janda,
mm-hmm.
and his reliable source that he trusts says
mm-hmm.
that it was China, that it was a rogue element in the China military.
Okay.
Because I guess not all the people agree, and that there is an element in the, and that there was a missile sent from a submarine, and that the good guys in China shot it down. So
Boy, that story keeps changing all along. I mean, the most recent version of the missile story I've heard is that the missile malfunctioned, which North Korean missiles have a tendency to do, and it was actually seen crashing into the ocean off the north shore of Oahu by a bunch of tourists. But since we didn't see all the people who actually live on the North Shore say anything about it, again, I think somebody's just trying to muddy the waters. But at this point, my sense of it is they were actually running a test to see how the people in Japan and here in Hawaii would react to the alert so that they can do some planning. Whether it is more effective civil defense, we hope, or they're actually planning a false flag, we dread. But that seems to explain why there were two of these supposed accidental alerts so close together.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that in the mind of the people that the threat would have been coming from North Korea.
Well, that's what they've been sold by the corporate media for months now. North Korea's nuclear weapons, North Korea's missiles. It's a constant drumbeat. It's like the drumbeat we hear about Iran and their nuclear weapons, which they don't have. Or the drumbeat we heard going into Iraq. Oh, they've got nuclear weapons. They've got chemical weapons. They're going to do this. They could attack London in 45 minutes. It's actually very, very similar to what preceded the invasion of Iraq.
And the French propaganda machine is in full swing too. I teach a class of English, and they're adult students, and they think that Kim Jong-un is crazy, and so they've been fed the propaganda and they gobbled it up. I try, a room full of people, a handful of people, I try to set them straight, but...
Well, I would be very careful. Word of caution, I would be very careful bringing politics into the classroom. Just because these people are there to learn English, not be proselytized. I followed that rule when I was teaching computer animation and visual effects at the University of Hawaii. Some of those students knew who I was. They knew about the website. But the rule in the classroom, we're talking about ray tracing, we're talking about textures and materials. That's what you guys are here to learn. That's what I'm being paid to teach, and we confine it to that. That's just professional ethics, I think.
Yes, I should listen to that.
But outside
the French
school,
are even...
Yeah, I mean, there could be a school policy on that. Outside, of course, when you're a private citizen, you can talk all you want, and I encourage you to do so.
The French are even more adamant about not talking about politics and religion than we Americans.
Oh, I don't know. Around here, Americans love to talk about politics and religion. More religion than politics, at least on this island. All right, Kathleen, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to James in Tokyo. James, welcome to the show here. Did you actually see that alert come out?
No, it didn't come to my phone, Michael. But, yeah, I want to talk to you about that. But first, I heard that you and Claire weren't doing well for a bit, and I hope you're both better. And as a Japanese, as an American working in Japan, I'm quite overworked. And when you finally get that harp playing Beautiful Angel back to the U.S., I really hope that I really want to go camping, and I hope that you can take her to a S-hole like the Silicon Valley so you can live in a tent, make 5 figures, and I can visit you and sit in your tent and be by a campfire while enjoying the cosmopolitan life of California.
Well, obviously, right now we're well motivated to get out of Hawaii and get back to the mainland, and we're looking at somewhere between the Plains area, the Central States, maybe up toward to New England, so that we can be close to our family members on both sides of the family. The problem is we're Hawaiian sourdoughs. We're sour on Hawaii, especially since last Saturday, but we don't have the dough to leave. So we're going to be working on that later this year and see what we can do to come up with that. The problem is between the computers, the studio, the harp, the big harp, it's going to be very expensive for us to move back to the mainland, and then we're going to need to have enough money to set up a new household there. So it's going to be a big operation. I was kind of hoping that, we'd win the lottery or something, but they don't sell the lottery here in Hawaii. But, yeah, we're concerned. We're obviously concerned. Where we live right now, there isn't any place nearby that would really work as a bomb shelter. I mean, there's this big shopping mall down the hill, but it's even closer to Pearl Harbor than we are. And so probably our best strategy is going to be just throw everything that we can in the car, hope the car starts, and start driving up the H2 toward the North Shore.
Well, I disagree with you when you said you think it was like a test of civilian defense. I've been dealing for maybe between 5 and 6 years with an air military branch of Japan, and I have to meet these people on a regular basis, and they can't meet me right now. As I'm told, they can't even sleep or eat, and they're working 24 hours a day. And I believe what it was, like when you first mentioned, and I read that it went to Hawaii, yeah, it could have been some dumb guy who made a mistake on a computer program. However, when it came in Japan, I thought something, more was happening. And
I agree. I
believe that it was actually, well, maybe like in Hawaii and Japan, some types of these systems are connected in a way, but not after a couple of days. I think it was like 3-4 days later that it happened in Japan. But anyway, so it should have been more immediate. However, I believe it was a test, but it wasn't a test for...
Okay, James, I'm going to put you on hold. Don't hang up the phone. I'm going to come right back to you after these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with James in Tokyo, and we're talking about this bizarre, probably not a coincidence, that both Hawaii and Japan had these so-called, accidental missile alerts. And because there were 2 of them, 2-3 days apart. I've dropped the idea that they were just simple, honest mistakes. I think they were testing how the public would react as some part of a larger plan, either for civil defense or a false flag attack to be blamed on North Korea, and they want to know how long they actually have to wait for the majority of the people to be someplace safe.
All right, Mike, so I said I don't believe that it's anything to do with civilian defense, because your whole purpose of doing something like that is to kill the civilians, and it's not like if they defend or not, it doesn't matter. You're still going to inflict damage. Even when there's civilian defense, they send a lot of stuff in the mail to you, like if there's an earthquake or something in Japan, like this is a park you should go to. I mean, you get that kind of stuff all the time, something where there's not a lot of building structures around, or try and go to a subway station. But yeah, I never got the alert on my phone. However, from the dealings that I've been doing with a branch of the Japanese military, the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, that's what it's called exactly, which I have to deal with kind of like on a daily basis now that I can't even meet these people. So I don't think it had anything to do with civilian defense. I think it had to do with more military defense. And I think, yeah, there was probably some kind of test, in my opinion, but it was not for civilian, but it was just meant for military defense to see how, if these things can be picked up properly, and if there was any kind of defense against any type of missile that was thrown at these two targets. And as you know, Hawaii and Japan, or they say Guam, are basically the only three types of targets that can be targeted by like a North Korea or something. But I really don't think it's North Korean personally. But they're trying to cause some kind of trouble because, Trump, the swamp is cleaning itself. I mean, you have all these people resigning from the Congress and everything else, and people are getting scared, and I think they just want to try and do something spectacular, and hopefully that you and me will not be involved with any type of a spectacular event.
Well, we're certainly hoping that, but of course, our concern, of course, is that Oahu's a little tiny rock, and there really isn't anywhere you can go to get away from it. Actually, I've had another thought about that, but yeah, it's going to be, it's very tense, and it is very upsetting, and a lot of people are very angry about it. And interestingly enough, most of the people I've talked to about this don't believe it was a simple accident. They think it was something that was deliberately done. They're still trying to figure out why, and everybody has their own suggestion. Okay?
Well, that's all I had to say, Mike, and take care of your girl, make her better, and you get better, and talk to you soon, brother. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to let you go, and yeah, today right after the show, I'm taking Claire to the chiropractor, and hopefully she'll come out better than she goes in. Overall, slowly, she is getting better, and we're both over the flu, although in her case it went into the bronchitis, and it seems to have given me a little chest congestion. I can't seem to get away from that either, but our focus is obviously on the Lady Claire. Okay, getting on back to the news here. Apparently, a former CIA case officer has been arrested in New York on suspicion of passing information onto communist authorities following the collapse of a U.S. spy network in China. This is coming out of the Justice Department. So apparently there was a spy network being operated inside China. It was taken down, and this guy got arrested. Okay, let's take another phone call from, actually no, we're coming up on a commercial break, and as soon as we come back from this commercial, we'll take this phone call and find out what this individual has to say. So stay tuned. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
You still have a minute. We changed the clock times.
Okay, apparently we've changed. Oh, that's right. We've changed the clock. I got another minute here. All right, so let's start with the phone call. Okay, Bob in Michigan. Aloha, Bob. Let's start with you, and then I'll take you to the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Michael. I don't think that North Korea would try to hit Guam, Hawaii, or anything else. Their missiles aren't that precise. They're going to wait until they can hit the mainland, where even if it goes astray, it will still strike. I don't think Hawaii, Guam, or any other island is at risk.
Well, yeah, we're a hard target to hit. We're an itty-bitty place out here. But the thing is, North Korea is not going to launch an attack without a very good reason. And that's why I think we may be looking at a false flag to get this thing going. All right, listen, Bob, stay on the line. Now we're going to do our commercial break, and we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Bob in Michigan, and something everybody needs to keep in mind. North Korea is not just going to haul off and start launching missiles for real. North Korea has invested in these nuclear weapons and these long-range missiles as a deterrent to hang on to them as basically a reason for other countries to leave it alone. That's the reason to have these weapons, to get other countries to leave you alone. And that was another reason why when we first saw the alert here in Hawaii, and I said, there's got to be something wrong here. North Korea is just not going to throw away these weapons and then leave itself defenseless and wide open for the retaliatory strike. It just doesn't make any sense. I think the reason that we're seeing all this activity for escalating the U.S. war on North Korea, is that the two Koreas are showing signs of coming together. They're unifying their Olympic teams. North Korea is sending down cheerleaders and an orchestra and all kinds of cultural exchanges going on. Obviously, the talks between the two Koreas are going very, very well right now. And I think the thinking in Washington, D.C. is to get the war going somehow, even if that means a false flag, before the two Koreas can announce they've agreed to reunify. That is what I think is going on here. Bob, what's your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the whole missile thing, I think, is way overblown. It's like with the two Vietnams, you know. Diem was getting along good with Ho Chi Minh, and then somebody went and assassinated Diem in 1963.
Yes.
And then we had the war.
Yep. He was assassinated, I think, just a few weeks before Kennedy was.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they ultimately reunited like they should, and the Koreas should be able to reunite. You know, it's their place. It's not ours.
Absolutely, absolutely. And 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they were having serious talks about reunification. But then the U.S. started meddling in there because the U.S. government seems to feel it has a divine right to treat other people's countries as their own property. Pardon me. And has just been trying to fan up the tensions. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that North Korea represents a dark stain on America's military history. It's one of the wars we did not win. It's still technically ongoing. And another aspect of it, of course, is the One Belt, One Road project that China is getting ready to do to make it easier to ship Asian products to Europe. And part of the plan is for part of that line to come down through a united Korea so that they can get more goods being manufactured there. And that's something else the United States wants to stop. The U.S. wants to completely prevent the One Belt, One Road project because in order to protect the revenue stream of American-owned, Western-owned cargo ship companies.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing on this Russian deal with the election, I don't want to hear about disturbing patterns and meddling. I want to have evidence. Where can we go to see where the Russians actually did something?
Nowhere. There was no evidence. Mueller has spent more than $7 million. It's been a year now, and he's come up with absolutely nothing. The only indictments he's handed down are for things that were completely unrelated to the campaign. Now he's going to get Steve Bannon in there before the grand jury, and I think he's counting on Bannon's anger and recklessness to say something in front of the grand jury that can lead to an indictment. Because, again, going back to Bannon's quotes in that book, Fire and Fury, that was very unprofessional of him to say those things, and especially coming from somebody who's supposed to be an expert on the media and understands the rules. And so I think looking at Bannon's quotes in that book, which he doesn't deny making, yeah, he can be very reckless and he can be led to say things that he doesn't really mean to say.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. How you doing?
Doing okay.
The whole thing with, it's about fear, Mike. That's what the tests were about, to keep people scared. That's what it was about. If you notice, if you see people putting their kids in the sewers, which I hope they took them out of the sewers, not forget about them.
Well, as far as I know, you know, they did. However, there was one. So far, we found out one individual after sending his farewell, I'm about to die message to everybody, actually suffered a fatal heart attack. So in his case, the messages were genuine.
Yeah, it's all about fear, Mike, like with the divide and conquer strategy. And, Mike, you said it, what this is all about. It's about one belt, one road. It's not about North Korea having or not having nuclear weapons, which they most likely have 60 to 80. But it's about the one belt, one road. It's about China. It's about Russia. It's about the petrodollar. This is what it's all about, people. And there's no Russia collusion. I want to break this to people. There is no America anymore. There's no United States of America anymore. It's United States of Empire. And you have a globalist entity of the British, French, German, parts of South America, parts of, Middle East that are on board with this globalist agenda. There is no America. George Washington doesn't exist anymore. These people don't believe in him. Lindsey Graham don't believe in him. John McCain don't believe in him. And this whole Russian collusion thing, Mike, everybody knows it's a fraud because Russia's part of that one belt, one road. He's throwing thing of the petrodollar. This is what it's all about. It's about power hegemony. This is what it's about. Everything else is just a diversion. You know, like the Black Lives Matter and all. It's just a diversion, Mike. It's to keep people busy with something else and not worried about. You ever notice in the last couple of days the Dow's at 26,000, Mike?
Yes.
The Dow's at 26,000, Mike. That's all you hear. It's a pump and dump. You know, when it's time, they're going to dump it. You know, what a joke. This whole thing's a joke, Mike. I mean, they're still talking about Russia collusion. It's been how long already?
Yeah.
There's nothing there because it doesn't exist. It's a fraud.
And the corporate media is going along with it. They're still trying to say that Russia hacked the DNC servers, even though technical analysts have said it wasn't hacked from outside. It was an internal leak, and most likely by Seth Rich.
Exactly. And if you want to see what the United States does, just look what it did in the Middle East, Iraq, Libya, Syria, and what about the Ukraine? Overthrew a democratically elected government. We keep saying we're a democracy, and we put in a puppet, you know, and they're backed by neo-Nazis. You know, that's your version of America now. You know, we lost America a long time ago. I know people can't accept that. But this just ain't America no more. It's not going to be ever again until we get rid of these people. And I hate to say it, Mike, but the only way to get rid of the people is they got to be swinging from a lamppost or something, or a tree, because that's it. You're not going to get rid of these people because they got their fingers in everything. They're everywhere. They got subordinates everywhere. They got the media. They got the deep state, Mike, the establishment. Lindsey Graham says one thing one day. And another day, it's another thing, and Trump says S-hole, he says hellhole, Lindsey Graham, and nobody checks him on that, you know, because he's part of that group too. You know, he's a piece of garbage. They're all pieces of garbage. They've all been bought off or they're blackmailed. That's it. You know?
Well, unfortunately, our society breaks down into two kinds of people. People who want to be honorable and moral, and those who just make that decision. I'm willing to be corrupted. And over time, the government draws in those people who are willing to be corrupted and who will do what they're told regardless of the consequences. And, you know, I look back on the one contact I had with the CIA at CBS all those years ago, where they asked me to do something I found morally objectionable, and I refused, and that was the end of it. And I'm realizing now that may have been the test. They may have asked me to do that to see if I would before they proceeded anymore. But again, I do have a strong inherent sense of morality and honor, and I like myself better that way. But there are, unfortunately, way too many people who are willing to be corrupted. They're willing to make that decision. They get into government, they see what it's really like, and they say, yeah, I can live with this. And they become very, very rich and very arrogant and very powerful. I'm still opposed to a violent uprising of any kind in this country. And I know I have been cautioning everybody, just wait, and this government will collapse. But unfortunately, if they really are getting ready to start flinging nuclear weapons around as a false flag and get this thing going for real, then obviously we don't have the luxury of waiting all that much longer.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm all over the map with this, Mike, but like you said, it all leads to the Belt and the Road. That's it. Even Europe is moving toward the Belt and the Road. So the U.S. is being left, it's going to be the lone man out. You know, maybe with Britain, you know, that's it, and some of its other, like Saudi Arabia or Israel, that's it. But probably Israel going to the Belt and the Road, you know, with some sort of trade deals, because, you know, when the writing's on the wall, you want to be the last man out, right? With the Federal Reserve notes.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what it's all about.
Somebody just sent me a gift of some of the Zimbabwe $10 billion notes, which is a reminder of where reserve banks actually wind up. The fact of the matter is that the United States is already feeling the pressure from the global economy. We had that story the other day where the U.S. is using diplomatic means, meaning arm twisting, to try and get the European Union member states to stop buying gas from Russia at a low price and start replacing it with U.S.-supplied liquefied natural gas, which is actually more expensive. And we may see that. If China does get the One Belt, One Road project going, we may see the United States arm-twisting countries, don't use this, keep using American shipping lines. And that's not good business sense. And that's a big part of the problem, is the United States government has gotten away with just scamming other countries for free money, like Bretton Woods. They've forgotten actually how to run an efficient business-like nation.
And don't forget, 2018, doesn't the Siberian gas pipeline come online in China? That's this year.
Yep.
And if you look at Vladivostok, that's the area where it's going to. And man, Mike, things are going to be happening this year. I can't even think of what's going to happen. But there's going to be a lot of stuff changing this year, I believe,
yes,
and from now on, because there's just too much debt in the Western world, particularly. You know, people don't have like you said, no money to buy stuff. Everybody's got to charge stuff, but they only can do that a certain amount of times.
Yes.
You know, once you reach a plateau, you know, then it's like, you know, you're going to be stagnant, you know, and it's like, people need to realize what's going on. I just want to tell people to make sure you're ready and have at least some gold, some silver, some cash, some water, and some food for, you know, a short period of time just to get you through, because, you know, it can happen tomorrow. I'm not Nostradamus. I don't know what's going to happen the next day, but it's better to be safe than sorry, Mike. And yeah, I think there's just too much welfare and warfare in this day, and all the pensions can't be paid off, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get your pension, it gets cut in half, and that means half the money can't go into the economy, right? I mean, if you're only getting half your paycheck, like half the pension you get, you got to make decisions of either to eat or to buy like something else to enjoy. You know, if you can't,
well, you know,
I'd rather eat than to buy like a movie. You know,
we may be seeing, you know, the accelerating the transition from a peacetime to a wartime economy, because again, if you go back and you study conditions during World War II, all the money was for the war, and ordinary people had very, very little. They were just getting by, and yes, they'd go to the movies because it would, you know, relieve some of the tension. But it was, you know, they had rationing of food supplies, rationing of tires, it was very hard for the civilian population, and we seem to be headed in that same direction. And looking at my new explanation, or my new theory, for why we had these two so-called accidental missile alerts here in Hawaii and Japan, it does look like our government is seriously considering escalating the situation against North Korea, even though North Korea and South Korea are getting all buddy-buddy.
It'd be a big mistake because the Chinese will come in and the Russians will come in, and it's World War III, and the United States is going to lose, Mike.
I know. I know.
It doesn't have the resources now anymore, Mike.
I mean, all these other countries on Earth...
It's the same country it was during World War II, Mike.
No, it isn't. It isn't. For one thing, the general population is better informed and much more skeptical than it was in World War II. But here's the situation. All these leaders of all these countries around the world have been watching the United States for the last 17 years, going into country after country after country, and for the most part they've stood back and said, yeah, okay, if you want to go into Iraq, go ahead, we won't do anything. Yeah, if you want to go into Libya, we won't do anything. If you want to go into Syria. It's called appeasement. And it didn't work. I mean, Neville Chamberlain tried that with Nazi Germany and got the usual promises, yeah, we're going to stop here and we won't do any more. And the Nazi government didn't keep its treaty agreements any more than the United States does. And it just kept on going until finally the rest of the world realized Neville Chamberlain was full of it. He was basically kicked out, replaced by Winston Churchill, and everybody understood, yeah, the only way they were going to stop the Nazis is everybody was going to have to stand up to them together. And we're rapidly approaching the point, and North Korea could be it when the rest of the world realizes, as bitter as it's going to be, they're going to have to stand up and unite together to stop yet another rogue power. And I think we're near that point.
And I just want to say one more thing. Remember, when all you all are eating Spam out of can, your oligarchs, Bushes, the Clintons, the McCains, the John Boehners, they're all eating filet mignon and lobster tails and laughing it up. You know, it's an oligarchy. You know, like George Carlin says, one big party and you ain't in it. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. But just remember, here in Hawaii, Spam is considered good food. You know, it's part of the culture. And yes, that goes back to World War II when it was introduced as the war rations. But yeah, you go into any Hawaiian restaurant, there's all kinds of Spam dishes around the menu. It almost reminds me of that Monty Python sketch about Spam. All right, so the phone lines are now open. The phone number is 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the news. Actually, we're coming up on a commercial break, so I'm going to hold off the news until after we come back from these words from our sponsors, and feel free to join us on the air after these few messages. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Getting on back to the news, getting on back to the war zones, emphasis on the plural more and more every day. As you know, Turkey is saying they're getting ready to go into Syria to basically get rid of the U.S.-backed Kurds. And they're now saying the operation has not begun yet, but they're now saying the operation is probably going to expand beyond Afrin and could expand to the nearby city of Manbij. Now, obviously, when Syria invades, the Kurds are probably going to retreat, which means Turkey is going to be pushing on in to Syria to get those U.S.-backed Kurds. And probably Syria's government isn't going to be that upset with it because they don't like the Kurds either, and the fact that they're backed by the United States. Now, the United States has put this 30,000-strong so-called border force into Syria to basically draw out the borders of an eventual Kurdistan. And so those U.S. forces could find themselves between the Turkish army on one side and the Syrian army with Russian support on the other. I wonder if they resurrected General Custer to lead that particular exercise. Down in Yemen, the Houthi rebels are claiming a successful ballistic missile attack on a Saudi military base. They claim to have struck targets inside Saudi Arabia after launching 2 ballistic missiles on yesterday. Some pro-Houthi sources also reported the destruction of a Saudi military base in Najran, which lies in southwest Saudi Arabia near the border with Yemen. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia disputes that the missiles hit their targets, saying it was a near miss, They just had somebody who hit the wrong menu on the computer program, I guess. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley is out there proclaiming a huge diplomatic success for the United States. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was able to convince Saudi Arabia to start allowing some humanitarian aid into Yemen. And apparently they're going to let some ships in. 4 American mobile cranes have arrived in Hudaydah, Yemen, apparently to replace ones that were destroyed, and they're going to be used to offload all of this stuff. What's really interesting is Nikki Haley came out with this amazing quote: "No one should ever have to live the way the people of Yemen are living." Well, Nikki, they're living that way because of the U.S. efforts to regime change their country, the failure of the last installed government, and the U.S. using Saudi Arabia as a proxy to reimpose a new puppet government. These people of Yemen would not be living the way they are. They would not be suffering if the U.S. government would learn to leave other countries alone and focus on peace through commerce instead of commerce through war. Shame on you for your hypocrisy. Or maybe it's just complete and total ignorance about what's really going on. It's amazing. Now, apparently, Donald Trump has a plan to finally kill off the Iranian nuclear deal. And it's going to sabotage it, and they're going to try and do it in a way where the U.S. is not seen to explicitly violate the terms of the agreement. Trump will continue to suspend some sanctions as required under the terms of the deal, but at the same time he's warning that the agreement isn't changed to meet his demands. He will terminate it unilaterally. All right, we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2 here. And people are actually sending me photographs of all these T-shirts that are coming on out. I survived the Hawaii ballistic missile, or I survived the Hawaii ballistic missile crisis. So, you know, people got a sense of humor. They're rolling with the punches here, so forth and so on. But again, at this point, I think it was a test of how the public would react. And I'm concerned as to what the reason may be for wanting that information. Because when they do a false flag, obviously they need some bloody shirts, but they don't want to kill a lot of people. That's why so many people were not at the World Trade Towers when that went down. And the planes that hit the towers and the Pentagon and crashed in Pennsylvania actually had very light manifests. If you've flown recently, you know they jammed those airplanes full. So anyway, getting on back to what's going on against Iran. Apparently, Iran is starting to arrest the leaders of the violent riots in Isfahan. And they've arrested 4 females who endeavored to provoke the recent economic protest into riots, and apparently received orders from the anti-revolutionary forces outside the country, meaning those who are on the side of rule by the Shah. And they've been arrested by security forces. Apparently, preliminary investigations disclosed they had links with an online movement named My Stealthy Freedom that was commenced in 2014 by Masih Alinejad, an Iran-born anti-revolutionary journalist and activist based in Britain and the U.S., as well as the West-based Telegram channel Sadai Mardam, formerly known as Ahmad News, which released fake reports on the protests in Tehran. This is a replay of 2009, when there was a covert attempt at regime change in Iran, and a lot of people got killed, and there was a lot of violence and property damage. A lot of people got hurt, and the reason it fizzled, they made 2 mistakes. They drove up the van and they started handing out the flag of the new Republic of Iran, and older Iranians instantly recognized it as the flag of the Shah. And the second mistake was the son of the Shah went public announcing he was ready to resume the throne. And at that point, the whole thing fell apart. So this is just a replay. It's another attempt at changing the government of somebody else's country. So a lot of people are saying, you know, what is America trying to do here? What has America's foreign policy become? It used to be about getting along with other countries, doing business with other countries. And today, our foreign policy, it seems to be focused on covert conquest, if not overt conquest. Since the end of World War II, the United States government has tried to regime change other countries 50 times, succeeding about half the time. And they've even tried to do it to countries we would consider our friends, like they did it in France in the 70s. And the blowback from that may have been the reason France decided to send back all these stacks and stacks of Federal Reserve notes and redeem them for gold at $32 per ounce per the Bretton Woods Agreement, which in turn forced Richard Nixon to end gold convertibility, which led to a drop in the dollar, which was propped back up by the petrodollar deal. See how these all cause and effect, cause and effect. None of these incidents happens in a vacuum. They always have precursor causes, and they always have after effects. Now, down in Palestine, President Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority basically said that the Oslo Accords are dead, that Israel killed them with its continued illegal settlements, that President Trump killed them with his recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and basically told the United States they don't care that Trump is cutting off financial aid. In fact, he said, damn your money. He went on to say, we will not accept for the U.S. to be a mediator, because after what they have done to us, a believer shall not be stung twice in the same place, which is, I guess, the Palestinian version of fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And he's absolutely right. The U.S. has lost any illusion that it was an impartial arbiter in what was going on in that part of the world. Now, Netanyahu is blasting Abbas, basically saying that, okay, if he's saying the Oslo Accords are over, he's revealing the truth about the ongoing conflict, and he actually did Israel a favor. So now we're seeing a war of words between Israel and Palestine. And obviously we know from past history that if a major war breaks out in Syria, or if a major war breaks out in Korea, Israel will use the distraction to go on in and take back Gaza and clean out the West Bank. They always love to do these things when the rest of the world is looking somewhere else. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, Beijing is blasting this U.S. and Canada-led summit regarding Korea. And this was a huge meeting, took place up there in Canada. In fact, I was talking with Jim Goddard about it yesterday. And apparently the meeting is rather interesting because of all the countries that were invited, 20 different nations. The ones who were not invited were China, Russia, and North Korea. Basically, it was a get-together of the U.S. and all of its co-conspirators who agreed to ramp up more pressure on North Korea. And again, North Korea and South Korea appear to be in a state of detente. They're getting all buddy-buddy. They're sending that unified team to the Olympics. That is a tremendous symbolic gesture of reunification. If the diplomats from North and South Korea come out of that peace house in the one area that's shared by both Koreas and announce we're going to reunify, that would yank the rug out from the whole mess. And I think that's why the U.S. is in a race now to try and get something going before North and South Korea announce they've made peace and the war is over. So again, North and South Korean athletes have formed one unified team, and when they march in the opening ceremony on February 9th, they're going to be marching under one flag. We have no idea what that flag is going to look like. I don't think it's going to be the flag of South Korea. I don't think it's going to be the flag of North Korea. I think it's going to be a brand new flag of the unified Korea. I think that's where they're heading, because neither of the two Koreas want a new Korean war. And I think right now they're realizing that announcing reunification is the only option they have to stop this from happening. Okay. Yeah, AP reporting U.S.-led meeting on North Korea pressure despite North-South détente. They're trying to make peace. The U.S. is still out there saying, yes, we need a good war out there. Washington Post had a story, a nuclear North Korea is bringing back Cold War paranoia. Well, I beg to differ. It's U.S. propaganda that's bringing back Cold War paranoia, because other nations have had nuclear weapons, some of which don't like us, all along, like Pakistan or Russia. The Cold War paranoia is being driven by the corporate media. And the propaganda is continuing. This story just came on out. Trump is saying Russia is helping North Korea skirt international sanctions. And in doing the help China is giving the U.S. as Kim inches closer to having nuclear missiles. Let's be clear. He's got them. He's got the missiles. And obviously somebody thinks he's really got them, or they wouldn't have sent out that alert on Saturday. And some of the propaganda is just downright silly. This one came out of the Express in Great Britain. North Korea could turn to dealing deadly crystal methamphetamine to fund its weapons programs. And basically saying the state's army of highly trained hackers turn their talents to peddling the deadly drugs on the dark web. This is coming from a single source, a money laundering expert. There's a couple of problems with that. North Korea doesn't really have all that much expertise in computers. They were blamed for the Sony hack, which turned out to be an internal leak again. And selling something on the dark web is one thing, being able to deliver it is another. And I don't think North Korea would be any more successful at delivering their ordered crystal meth than any other country that's not already working for the Central Intelligence Agency. This is the scariest story, though. Apparently Donald Trump did an interview with Reuters and actually came on out and said it is very possible the crisis with North Korea can't be resolved. So Trump is trying to make it look like they're trying to do something diplomatically, but they aren't, really. South Korea has made a huge amount of progress with North Korea in just a few days. The U.S. approach to North Korea is you do what we tell you to do. And that doesn't go over well to the Asian mindset. All right, we're going to take a phone call now, and that's Ken in Fort Worth. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Howdy, howdy. Steve Bannon worked for Trump, then he worked for Breitbart News, and then he says he's not going to work for Breitbart News anymore. And then they call him in the back room in Congress, and then Mueller wants to talk to him. Why do they talk to him? Why do they talk to him in secret? Is he a spy or CIA or NSA guy or what?
Well, again, I mean, Bannon was with Breitbart before he went to work with Trump, and then after
that's true.
They're falling out, he went back to Breitbart. And I think it's Breitbart's decision that Bannon will no longer be there. But I think what's going on, if you go back to that book, Fire and Fury, and you read Michael Wolff's interview with Steve Bannon just mouths off like crazy. And he's not denying that he said these things. He's apologized for them. But what it tells us is that Steve Bannon is very reckless when his mouth gets going. He can be provoked into saying some very damaging things. And I think Mueller's plan here is to get Bannon in front of the grand jury and provoke him into saying something from which an indictment against Donald Trump can be filed.
Yeah, but why did they talk to him in secret?
I was not aware. You're saying that the testimony before the grand jury is behind closed doors? It's always behind closed doors. It's always behind closed doors.
He talked to Congress today because I watched Fox News and I was waiting for some video and there wasn't any, but he was talking to him in the back room in secret. Now, what's the point of that? Is he a spy or CIA or an SA guy or what?
All right.
What's so secret?
Okay. Who did you see Bannon talking to?
Well, Bannon was talking to U.S. Congress, I guess, in the back room. I couldn't figure out what happened, why. Don't make any sense.
I saw nothing about that. I mean, Congress today has been all about Bob Dole, and a lot of people have been speaking. But I've seen nothing about Bannon testifying before Congress today.
I thought it was on Fox this morning. Snoop around and see what you find and try to figure out why. I can't figure out.
All right, I'll snoop around a little bit. But again, I was on the Fox feed all morning, and all they were doing was Bob Dole and his Congressional Gold Medal, which they finally moved away from that because he's got his medal and he's happy and he's going home. All right, Ken, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to get on back here to the news. Now, with all the other tensions in the region, and don't forget that whole thing over the South China Sea and those islands has not gone away, apparently China has deployed a carrier group through the narrow Taiwan Strait that separates Taiwan from the mainland, and it may be heading to the South China Sea, or it may be positioning for something else that is about to happen. There's a lot of hardware on the move, and without revealing specifics, we're seeing a lot of activity down here on our Pearl Harbor and Hickam and so forth. China apparently is getting ready to deploy nuclear submarines to Pakistan's Gwadar port. China is now starting to project power outside their own borders. They've already got that new base in Africa that's coming online, and now they want to base some of their nuclear submarines at foreign ports. That is very worrisome. What they're doing is dispersing their assets, because in the event of a major war, you don't want to have all of your weapons in one little tiny place. You spread them around. Okay, over in Israel, this issue of the Tamimi family is really getting out of control, and the more Israel does, the worse it looks for them, but they can't seem to stop moving forward. As you know, there was an altercation where IDF soldiers shot the brother of Ahed Tamimi, and she slapped one of them. That was it, a slap. She's been arrested and taken away. The brother has now been arrested and taken away, and Israel has now declared the entire village of Nabi Salah a closed military zone. In other words, they're all going to be kicked on out, and their homes are going to be bulldozed. Okay. Well, the good news for Israel is they have another Nazi to wag at us. We found one. We found one still alive. We've got a Nazi. We're going to put him on trial, and we can wag the Nazis at you so that you won't pay attention to what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. You're going to love this one. Okay, 94-year-old. He was a bookkeeper at Auschwitz. That's it, bookkeeper. Okay, they don't have anybody who actually committed any of the supposed war crimes. Their attitude now is just being there means you're guilty. Remember, one of the other Nazi war criminals was, oh my goodness, he handled the dogs, and this is a bookkeeper. And he was probably ordered to go over there and just keep the books. That's it. But he's a living Nazi. He was at Auschwitz. We're going to put him on a show trial, and probably they're glad for that, because the last one they had died before they could get him into the courtroom. It's just insane. Okay, do you remember all those ship collisions that happened a while back? And there were all these trolls all over the independent media saying, oh, no, it was a deliberate attack by these very expensive cargo ships and tankers. They deliberately rammed our Navy ships. We don't do that sort of thing. And then the Navy came on out and said, yeah, that the ships were being mishandled. Apparently the Navy has a problem with recruitment, and they are handing these very expensive, not to mention dangerous assets to very inexperienced crews. But apparently some of these U.S. Navy officers who were in command of those ships when they collided are facing homicide charges. and specifically the commanding officer of the USS John S. McCain guided missile destroyer, which collided with a merchant ship near Singapore. He's being looking at charges of dereliction of duty, hazarding a vessel, and negligent homicide. So the commanding officer and 3 other officers on the USS Fitzgerald guided missile destroyer, which collided with the Philippine container ship in June, are looking at possible charges including dereliction of duty, hazarding a vessel, and negligent homicide. And they should. When you are in charge of a vessel like that, you got to be paying attention. And again, there is a priority called right-of-way. And these big container ships, cargo ships, these super tankers, they can't turn, they can't slow down very fast. You get out of their way. You don't try and race around and get ahead of them. It's just amazing that something this dumb could happen here. I don't know, maybe they were being crewed by buddies of all these admirals over in the West Pacific who were caught up in that Fat Leonard bribery scandal. The U.S. looking to go to war in the Western Pacific? They really, let alone not having the money for it, they don't have the personnel. They've got a command staff that's guilty of bribery and inexperienced kids running these very dangerous platforms. That's not a good recipe. We got to take a break for commercials, and when we come back, we're going to have some phone calls. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And for those of you who would like to support Republic Broadcasting and keep us on the air, at least until the next ballistic missile, the address is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. If you would like to phone on in and become a recurring subscriber, that number is 800-724-2719, extension 03. Okay, let's get on back to the phones here. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, I was just listening to your reporting on the Tamini family and how they've put that village off limits and probably will end up bulldozing it, making all those people homeless. I just want to say, of course, collective punishment is a war crime. Settling an area, colonizing a conquered area is a war crime. Apartheid itself, I guess you could say, is a war crime. And you look at this guy, this 94-year-old accountant or whatever, bean counter or whatever he was. And by the way, let me just say that Adolf Eichmann was a logistician. All he did was make out, he didn't kill anybody. He made out train schedules, allegedly. But they didn't have him pulling the trigger or, whatever they said. He didn't kill anybody. But at any rate, what I'm going to tell you is that with all these war crimes that are war crimes, that are considered war crimes, and if you're going to consider a logistician or a bookkeeper a war criminal, well, why not take all those photos? Like, for instance, I saw photos of a bunch of Israeli soldiers, including females, taking away that little Aiea Tamini. Why not collect their pictures, marry it up with some facial recognition software. Let's keep a database so that we can track these guys down until they're 94 and hold them accountable.
Well, might happen. It might happen. Again, I'm convinced that the United States and its allies, including Israel, are going to lose this next war, especially if it goes nuclear, and it probably will. So future history books will portray them as the bad guys, and I think 50 years from now, the United States is going to be as reviled by the general public as Nazi Germany is today, because whatever media comes along after the war, under the control of the victors, they'll do that. They'll lionize the victors and they'll demonize the losers. And I hate to think of future generations of Americans having to live with that, just like I feel sorry for the Germans who were born after the war, having to live with that stigma.
Mike, I travel a lot, and I would tell you that American government, if not the American people, sometimes the people as well, but the American government is already reviled. Any thinking person in the world knows what we're doing, and we're already reviled. You'll find that a lot of the people will look at you and I as victims of our own government, which we are, really, but our government is completely reviled. Hell, even all our long-term allies are deserting us. You know?
Yes.
Nobody wants to be affiliated with us, really.
Well, again, to go back to the model of World War II, it was three nations, Germany, Japan, and Italy, that were on one side against everybody else on the other, and then Italy switched sides halfway through. So it could be the United States and Israel, and maybe, and the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands will always go along with the United States. So it'll be the United States, Israel, and the Marshall Islands against the rest of the world.
Well, but as far as the people of the world, they're completely aware of how heinous we've become.
Yes.
So, the government, most of them do not hold the people accountable, although we're allowing this to happen. But the government, they know, is heinous. So,
well, we're not allowing this to happen. Hang on. I take issue with that statement. We're not allowing this to happen. We voted in the candidate who said they were going to pull back, but of course we got lied to. Same thing back in 2008. Barack Obama on the campaign trail was saying, the very first thing I do after I'm elected is I'll stop the war and bring our people home. So we've tried every peaceful means that we can. We're working within the Constitution and the election system. We have clearly been disconnected from the real politics of this country. And so it's not a case of we're allowing this to happen. We can't stop it. We are trying to stop it. We can't stop it, unless we're going to start a civil war in this country.
Mike, you're right. I correct what I was going to say, but let me make one more point.
Well, before you do that, Peter, we got to take a break for commercial. Stay on the line. I'm going to put you on hold. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles, and Peter, just sort of pick up where you left off.
Well, you're right that I certainly didn't vote, and I know you didn't either, for the wars and all the things that are going on. But I want to also point out that the Germans didn't vote for Hitler either. They voted for Hindenburg, and Hindenburg died in office, and Hitler passed something like the Patriot Act, called the Enabling Act, which allowed him to take over. Any of the atrocities that are alleged, and I repeat, alleged, that the Germany was supposed to have carried out against the Jews, which I take great issue with, frankly. But even what they were alleging took place mostly in Poland, or the occupied territories, under total censorship from the papers, and that's even if you believe the story that we're told, and I don't. But on the other hand, Israel, founded on ethnic cleansing and massacres, with prime ministers who literally pulled the trigger on these guys, several of them, has had every single government since 1948 endorse and vote for and perpetuate apartheid and Jim Crow, racist, thuggish apartheid, and every single in a totally militarized society where every man and woman too, pulls their time in the Israeli army and keeps the Palestinians down. It keeps going down there and shooting at the unarmed Palestinians, the rock-throwing teenagers, and all that. They've done that for 70 years. Every one of them, and they voted every one of these governments in. And I hold up to you the difference. And I would tell you that, in my opinion, Israel is worse.
Well, let's confine it to the government. Let's confine it to the government for two reasons. Pardon me. First of all, right now, the people of Israel are very angry with Netanyahu. They're concerned about the corruption charges. There are calls for him to step down. And don't forget there were all those students a week ago who signed a letter saying basically they refuse to serve in the IDF because it is committing what, in their mind, these atrocities and these war crimes and apartheid. So the people of Israel are not on board with what the government of Israel is doing, just like most of the people in Germany were not on board with what the Nazis are doing, just like most of the people here in the United States are not on board with what the U.S. government is doing. But when a government decides it's going to become aggressive and tyrannical, the first thing it does is it disenfranchises its own people. They may have something that looks like elections, but it's just for show. It's just for theater. It's like Stalin said, people who vote decide nothing. People who count the votes decide everything.
Well, Michael, I'm aware there's a small opposition to that, but the fact of the matter is, for 70 years, these people, the Israeli citizens, have been supporting governments and policies that are absolutely Jewish supremacist, Lebensstrom, chosen people, Aryan race crap, and they're the ones that keep putting these people down, keep shooting at these kids, keep imprisoning people without trial, and stealing the land, and they've done it for 70 years, and it may be a small minority, but it's a small minority.
Well, you need to understand something. You need to understand. Okay, Peter. This attitude of Jewish superiority and this willingness to simply take from others started long before the government of Israel. It's wired into the religion. And I know this because my first wife was Jewish, and when she started sharing some of this stuff with me, for a while I thought she was pulling my leg. But this idea that the Jews are God's chosen people, that's wired into their religion. And you know how religion can just trap people. They can't break free from it. Along with the idea that the Ten Commandments only apply to their fellow Jews and everybody else is fair game. I think it's in the Talmud, it says that God has exposed the Gentiles' money for you. So, I mean, if you're raised with that as a fundamental religious belief from childhood, it's going to shape how the culture behaves. There are a lot of similarities between the Jews and the Roma, who also had a culture that said, yeah, we're going to take care of ourselves and everybody else is fair game. Unfortunately, the Roma didn't pull it off, and they don't have their own nation yet.
Well, I agree with you. It's steeped in the religion, but that doesn't let them off.
No, in the eyes of other people, right. In the eyes of other people raised with other religions, they are behaving badly. In their own eye, they're the good guy. And part of the reason that the people of Israel support the government of Israel is because the government of Israel is constantly propagandizing them that the rest of the world wants to kill them all off. Every other leader of every other country is an anti-Semite. They're the new Hitler. They're all waiting for a chance to destroy the Jewish people. Again, though, if you look throughout history, the friction between Jews and the people around them arises from the behavior of the Jews, not wanting to assimilate, basically staying isolated and behaving in a very economically predatory manner toward those around them. And inevitably that's going to cause friction. Anyway, Peter, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. We've got other callers waiting on the line, but before we get to them, somebody sent me in a story here. Apparently, Steve Bannon had a second subpoena. This is not in front of the grand jury, and he was subpoenaed to come on in and answer some questions, and they made a deal for a closed-door hearing with the House Intelligence Committee. So this is what that other caller was talking about. And apparently somebody has already leaked that Bannon admitted he'd had conversations with Reince Priebus, Sean Spicer, and legal spokesman Mark Corallo about Don Jr.'s infamous meeting with the Russians in Trump Tower in June 2016. Now, they're pushing the idea that this is the closest thing that exists to evidence the Trump campaign was willing to entertain collusion with Russians. No, because that meeting with Donald Trump Jr. was all about the Magnitsky Act, and there was nothing offered about collusion. So they're grasping at straws over there at Mueller's office. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here. Francis in North Carolina, welcome back to the show. Francis, what's on your mind today?
Hello, aloha to you both.
Aloha, aloha.
As far as hello, and snape bar and all. As far as the scenario with both North and South Korea is concerned and their participation under one flag, absolutely fantastic news. I am so tickled to hear this, and I hope they continue on with that. As a result, my orders stand as it says in the U.S. to the military-industrial complex and the Federal Reserve. As far as the military-industrial complex is concerned, stop accepting the billions of Federal Reserve notes that the Federal Reserve spits into your lap to try to do some hateful warmongering against the two Koreas as a result, and trying to start some kind of garbage. Enough's enough. Leave them be. Leave them alone. They have no interest in you. Back off. Period. That's my sentiment about that part. Secondly, as far as the election process, yes, whenever a politician goes into office or whatever, they're going to say whatever they have to get themselves elected into office, as it were. They will lie out the wazoo. Hence, the aspect of my question is how many lies does the everyday person in the U.S. have to swallow before they actually realize that enough's enough? I am not going to lend my energy anymore to a election process that has proven itself to be nothing but a farce.
Well, I ask that question in a more broad, general manner all the time. How many more times do you have to be lied to before you're going to stand up and say, I am tired of being lied to? As far as the election process, I know a lot of people don't even bother anymore, but that's basically surrendering and giving up and saying, yeah, you're the government, go on choosing your own leaders, and we'll just go on doing what they tell us to do, which was like the old Soviet Union model. But ultimately, the American people need to rise up as a first step and demand a fair, honest, unified voting system across the country. And again, if you go to whatreallyhappened.com, if you can get to it or not, but we're still in that server upgrade mess, there's an article there on how to have honest elections. And I'm not saying what I've laid out there is foolproof, but it certainly gets away from the primary areas where fraud is committed, which is inside those electronic machines and inside those counting centers. It crowdsources the verification of the election. And obviously, going along with it, we have to have voter IDs again. And not just let a whole bunch of people coming in from all of these blank hole countries, as Trump would put it, to come on in and literally vote themselves our country. Because that's what's going to happen. The Democrats are using all these illegals. They're now admitting they're relying on all of these illegal immigrants to come on in and vote Democratic, to stay in power. And what these illegal immigrants are going to do is they're going to vote themselves the country we built.
Well, you have a very valid points there, except for one thing, though, mind you, is that when the process, the procedure, the program, what are you going to call it? Interesting word, program, for that matter, realizes that the people have withdrawn their energy from the process, and thus they cannot enact any more action as a result. They realize that they got a system failure, a system shutdown, because the people are no longer participating or lending their energy to that process. So if they are putting in someone of their own choosing, then they have run afoul of the law, period, since it's very obvious that the people are no longer tolerating or putting up with that process anymore.
Well, it sounds really good, but we're dealing with a government that is openly violating the law and getting away with it in the case of Hillary Clinton. They're contemptuous of the rules. Again, there was this Goldwater rule saying you're not going to do a psychiatric analysis on somebody over television anymore, and yet that's exactly what they're doing with Donald Trump. So Washington, D.C. has become a criminal center. It's a crime scene. It's not a capital anymore. It's a crime scene, and they're behaving like it. It's one big gang, and they're all dirty with dirty money, and they'll just keep on going. They may not care whether we go along with it anymore or not, as long as we're all out there working and paying taxes. Except, of course, most of us aren't working. And with this trend toward robots, there's going to be even less employment and less tax revenues. And again, it shows that Washington, D.C. is incapable of thinking long-term, which may indicate that we're already entering a stage of very slow shutdown. As far as the system is concerned, it's already failed. It's failed in so many different ways. It's certainly failed with regard to its obligations to the American people. It's failed with regard to its obligations to its own veterans. We got a story about that later in the show. So, yeah, it does feel like the last days. It does feel like the last days. My concern is that in its death throes, the U.S. government is going to try this desperate attempt at a world war to save itself, and they're going to destroy a lot of people and a lot of important things in the process.
Well, as much as they may try to do that, expect for that to fall flat on its face as well, because who are they going to get to do the fighting for them? The people are fed up with that, with going out, and no matter how much they drug the people to go and take another life, the people have had enough. So no matter what the military promises a person to go and shoot someone's head off or whatever, or shoot them in the back, people are not going to put up with that anymore. They've had enough. I mean, well, they may bring, at some point they'll bring back the draft, and even with that, we're already seeing a decided shift away from human soldiers to automated robotic fighting systems, and of course the military-industrial complex is all in favor of that because that's more product for them to sell. Oh, there you go. There you go. It's getting pathetic. Have a great one.
It's getting dangerous. All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Alex in Florida. Alex, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, what you're talking about is more important than the fake news awards. However, I just want to let you know, if you do a Google search, like winner of the fake news awards, all those papers, the Google papers that are on the top list, keep on saying it's an assault on democracy, that it's the Democratic. It's anti-democratic. It's anti-democratic that they're attacking the president every single day of the week, 20 and 30 times. They're such hypocrites. It's pathetic that where we're at, and I think they are worried about the fake news awards. And I hope Trump goes through with it and actually has the award ceremony. Do you think he's going to?
Well, let's see. I'm looking at the Twitter feed right now, and apparently it's still not happening. And then probably is a huge amount of pressure coming in from the corporate media to call this whole thing off. The Washington Post has been running a story saying it's going to be a flop, there's nothing to it, and they're running the same story every single day, day after day. So, yeah, I'm sure that they're probably out there lobbying the White House to say, don't do this, we'll say bad things about Donald Trump. If it happens, it happens. We'll certainly take a look and we'll get a giggle out of it. But we already know the corporate media is nothing but lies and propaganda. And that's why their audience is so low and why more and more people are coming to the independent media.
That's right. And that's also an attack on democracy, attacking the independent media like Mrs. Hillary Clinton does. Right on her campaign, acting like they're giving everyone false news and this and that. It's a joke. They can't handle the heat in the kitchen. They've been serving the food to us.
They can't. And now you've got the corporate social media has been recruited to impose censorship so that people using these big corporate media outlets, they're only seeing the liberal side of the argument. The conservatives are being silenced. They're not blocking child porn or drug sales or any of that other stuff, but by golly, those conservatives, they are going to be silenced.
Got that right. Now, I wanted to tell you that I became a diehard Trump fan because I support our duly elected president 100%. However, if Trump falls into the trap of going to war, I hate his guts. There is no excuse for any war. None.
No, there isn't. They're all made up. They're all made up. Anyway, listen, Alex, I got to let you go. We got to do a break for commercials. We'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha America, welcome back to the show here. I'm looking at this video feed from Turkish media showing this huge buildup of tanks and artillery on the Syrian border. So it looks like that is imminent. All right, let's go back to the phones. Jeff in Toronto, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I really hope that Donald Trump does have these fake news awards because, I was watching the media the other day. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was having her press conference, and then, they were discussing later on about the president's health. And as articulate as the fellow was, the general there who was describing the procedures that he was doing with Donald Trump, it didn't seem like it was going in one ear out the other with the media, and that they were searching for something that wasn't there. And the media is asking questions about, as you know, you're not allowed to diagnose someone with mental health issues unless you personally examine them. So for some reason, a lot of these people seem to think that they're able to make these diagnoses without having that, having seen the president. So it's just one question after the other. I'm sure you might have discussed it yesterday, where they were just relentless and they couldn't find anything. And then, today I'm listening to, and then Jim Acosta's in the White House, actually in the Oval Office, and he's actually living up to his name, like literally accosting Donald Trump about his remarks, whether he made them or not, about S-hole countries. And so it's just like, this is relentless. It's getting really frustrating and annoying. It's just the behavior of the media is just totally over the top. And then today you had like Jeff Flake on the Senate floor complaining about Donald Trump's treatment of the media. John McCain, another rhino, writing an op-ed piece in the Washington Post about the same thing, about how he's upset about Donald Trump's attitude towards the media. I mean, do they think that we're all stupid, that we can't see the behavior of the media is so literally crazy that it's just, people just can't take it anymore?
Yeah, it's crazy out there. I mean, I'm doing another search here to see what's going on, but apparently GOP senators are basically putting pressure on Donald Trump to call this off, and they're also saying the attacks on the press are anti-democratic. And again, that First Amendment was written to protect the truth, not to protect lies and liars. And that really is the issue. And I hope Donald Trump stands his ground on this. It's not that serious. It's supposed to be a very tongue-in-cheek thing. But as that previous caller said, right now the corporate media is just desperate to try and regain some of the public trust so that they can go on selling them more lies. I think it's already past the point of no return. Where we've caught the media in so many lies. And, of course, everybody remembers how the corporate media was out there selling this idea that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. Oh, he had nuclear weapons. And, again, we're at the point where the corporate media is out there saying, well, telling lies is part of the process, and getting the news wrong is part of the process, and you have to bear with us and just bear with the process. In other words, stay a loyal audience member and watch the commercials, even though you're not actually getting accurate facts from them. But yeah, I'm sensing panic in the corporate media because they're out there, they're just desperate to stop this. Anyway, Jeff, we got to do a station identification break. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be back with Hour 3 after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. During this last break, I was taking a quick look out there in the corporate media world, including the corporate social media world. The attacks on Donald Trump over this fake news award issue, it's intense. It is vicious in many cases. And so it basically does signal the corporate media is that afraid of losing any more of their reputation. But again, as I've said many times in the past, they did it to themselves. And I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. They abandoned the basic principles of journalism. They abandoned the reason they were given the protection of that First Amendment, which was to serve as a watchdog on government abuse. And they went over and they joined the other side. And they do lie. That's the reality. It's a long, long way since the days of Edward R. Murrow. Okay, let's talk about the economic news here. Crude oil price hits $70 per barrel. despite surging U.S. output. And apparently the United States is trying to ramp up production to keep oil prices down. And whether they're doing that for the economic reasons or to try and put more pressure on Russia, I suspect the latter, given that story about how the United States is arm-twisting Europe to stop buying natural gas from Russia through their pipelines and to buy liquefied natural gas sent over in these tanker ships, but it's much more expensive. Certainly the United States wants to stop that Nord Stream 2 project from going forward. It's all about the oil, where it goes, and what currency it is sold for. So, now, apparently the World Economic Forum is worried by the potential for war, and they ought to be. It looks like it's going to happen. Syria, Turkey, U.S. going after North Korea, all the wars that we already have. So basically, on the new year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a red alert instead of an appeal. And asked about trends for 2018, Joe McMoneagle, a senior, sounds like a character from Harry Potter, a senior energy analyst at Hedgiva Risk Management, told UPI there could be a few geopolitical lottery tickets in 2018. Because war is always a gamble. War is always a risk. But the United States government has backed itself into a corner. After Bretton Woods, our bankers were getting rich, loaning U.S. dollars to other countries for cross-border trade and banking. And U.S. importers were just sending boxes of ink and paper to other countries who were obliged to then accept them as equivalent to gold. And they were sending us agricultural produce and manufactured goods. That was one of the reasons for the golden time of the 1950s, was those two factors. The Bretton Woods Agreement, which was basically the U.S. imperial tax on the rest of the world, and the fact that we still had our industrial base intact, and other countries did not. Now, China and Russia are out there foreseeing the future fall of the dollar. Doesn't take a lot of brains and insight to say that, yes, that's where we're going here. And they're out there trying to basically bolster their own currencies by starting to back them partly with gold. And apparently Russia now has 1,842 tons of gold, and China has 1,828 tons of gold. And this article is trying to reassure us all that the U.S. dollar is still solid because the United States has 8,133 tons of gold, 8 megatons of gold. There's two problems with that. The U.S. dollar is not backed by gold. And we don't really know if the U.S. still has that 8 megatons of gold. There's never been a full audit of Fort Knox in like 50 years. And we know that the New York Fed was playing fast and loose with other countries' gold that were placed there for storage. Following the Nixon gold shock and people saying, wait a minute, is America's gold, because that gold in Fort Knox belongs collectively to the people, is it still there? And all they did is they held a press conference. They went into Fort Knox and they opened one door for one vault, and yes, there was a wall of gold there. They said, don't touch it, you can't analyze it. For all anybody knows, the vault was empty behind that one stack of gold in the front. We don't know. This was an issue that we raised on the gold conspiracy episode of America's Book of Secrets. And a lot of the stuff that we described and mentioned in that show has since been confirmed. All right, we're going to, first of all, do a shout-out to our honor affiliates who are rejoining our network. And then we're going to take a phone call from Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, that conversation you had with Peter about what responsibility do the people have, he said, you know, it's our responsibility for what our leaders do, and you said, well, they all lied in the campaigns and we voted for them, so we're kind of off the hook. Maybe I didn't have that right. But don't we have a responsibility to monitor them after we put them in office?
You're right, we do. You're right, we do. As this country was originally set up, we would elect politicians into Congress, into the White House. If they didn't do a good job, we'd vote them out the next time. But that was back when we had a fairly honest, reliable, trustworthy election system. But that's all been hijacked now. We've been disconnected from the political process. Now, I wasn't saying that the American people are off the hook. What I said is we are trying to stop this rush to war. There are no means open to us to do so, short of civil war or revolution, and I'm still not on board with either one of those.
I don't think that's entirely correct, Mike, because we could find out what's going on. We don't sit in front of CNN and say, oh, I voted the right way, so I'm just going to watch this. We got to go tune in to, for example, Republic Broadcasting Corporation and listen to this show every day. That's just one example. Stay informed is number one. Number two, we don't have to do an armed insurrection. If we had 10 million people on the White House lawn in front of Congress, don't you think that gets somebody's attention in a nonviolent way?
Yeah, that certainly would here. Lyndon Johnson wrote in his memoirs that when he looked out of the Oval Office and saw 1 million people on that mall, that was the day he realized they'd lost the war in Vietnam.
That's my point. And so I'm going along with Peter on that. You know, there's things we can do.
There's a wrinkle there. There's a wrinkle there. Okay, that protest on the mall was organized out of the colleges and universities, which were basically the heart of the anti-war movement. But today's colleges and universities have been transformed from open forums where ideas can be exchanged to strict enforcers of the liberal ideology. And even back in the 60s, the FBI had informants on all the college campuses. They couldn't stop it from happening. I imagine today that the FBI probably has a lot more informants on every college campus that are dedicated to just not letting an anti-war movement really get started.
Okay, if the colleges aren't going to work, let's forget the colleges. And in my case, I try to stay informed. I write my senator, but he's hopeless. He's just a talking head for the people that he represents, APAC, military-industrial complex, big oil, big pharma, all these deep state people. And he's not representing me. So I called up with a point of view, and he's coming back with their arguments, So we've lost complete control of the people who are supposed to be representing us.
Yes.
But so the colleges don't work, so find out what it is. Network. Everybody should network, and then
I agree on that
go
one.
from there. And
I'll tell you what's going to happen, and I'll tell you what's going to happen. Resistance is best when it's leaderless. I think we're approaching a point where the American people just spontaneously are going to stand up and say, enough. It's time to stop this. And it's not going to take a call to arms. It's not going to take somebody who's out there rabble-rousing. I think there's just going to be a threshold. Same in the Soviet Union. They just reached a point where the Soviet citizens simply said, we've had enough with this lying government. It's over. And, the Politburo officially dissolved the Soviet Union, and they became the Russian republics.
Okay, so where do we go from here? I mean, the average citizen of the United States.
Well, I've been counseling that we all wait patiently, but all of a sudden I'm realizing we don't have that luxury anymore because it does look like the U.S. is going to provoke something with North Korea and really crank this thing up. I actually, honestly, do not have an answer for you simply because I'm caught between the rock and the hard place. I will not advocate a violent uprising or civil war. I know there are a lot of other people who are out there doing that. We had a caller earlier in the day talking about members of Congress swinging from ropes, and I know a lot of people are feeling that way. I'm too old to be a part of that, and that's not really a cop-out. It's just I know in my heart it's not something I'm prepared to do.
Well, I think, I've said people are wising up, but then I go out and talk to the average Joe in the street, and he doesn't have a clue. And this is professional people, too. I mean, dentists and doctors and lawyers and government people. And, I thought they would get a little more wiser. I know a lot of people are wising up.
Yep.
But you know, some of them are singing their tune, you know, like Iran's going to get a bomb, we got to get them, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I talk to those people, and that's what we all got to do.
Yeah, I've been saying that all along. The very best thing that you can do to help us out is to take what you learn here on this show and share it with everybody that you know. And if you're going to run up against a lot of people who don't want to know what's going on because they don't want to have to face the question of what they will do about it. But anytime you run into any resistance about, the government wouldn't lie about this, just remind them, Saddam did not have nuclear weapons. We were lied to by the government and the corporate media about the threat from Iraq to justify an invasion, just like we're being lied to right now about the threat from North Korea to justify a war there.
Exactly. I got a millionaire friend of mine who I talked to on the phone this morning at length, and he says, I don't want to get involved in any of that. Yeah, I read, I can't do anything about it, so why should I try? And so, where do you go from there? And
well,
anyway,
there's actually something that he can do. If he's a millionaire, he could write a couple of checks to Republic Broadcasting and to whatreallyhappened.com because we're not millionaires.
I'm going to tell him that.
Okay.
And I got my pledge in there. Every month you get a little bit. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit.
Oh, well, good for him.
Hey, Mike, I'm going to let you go, let you get to the next caller, and we'll talk to you some other time.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We're going to let you go, and we're going to go to Jack in, let's see, I have to look at my little cheat sheet for Louisiana. That's Jack in Louisiana. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, I went through advanced individual training in 1974 in Fort Knox. I put down on the paper I could drive a truck, so I got to drive the guard truck around.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Did we lose Jack? I guess so. I thought we were going to get a really good story. All right, well, the phone lines are open, and getting on back to the economic news here, apparently the U.S. and China are bracing for a trade war that could potentially impact the entire global economy. Now, at the moment, China is going along with the idea of pressure on North Korea. But if the U.S. and China get into this trade war, I imagine that China might decide their own economy is better by going back to trading with North Korea. And again, it shows everybody in Washington, D.C. is just thinking about their one little box. Okay, we've got Jack back now. So, Jack, you were driving the guard truck around Fort Knox.
Yeah, and we drove right down the road in front of the vault. The front gate was open up the walkway, and the vault door was sitting wide open. And I asked the drill sergeant, how come we're not dropping off any guards at that vault thing, Drill? And he said, there hasn't been any gold there for a long time. 1974.
Oh, wow. That's quite a story there. Oh, my goodness. That's quite a story. Well, that would certainly explain Nixon's move. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks an awful lot for that.
All right.
All right. Have a good day. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the news. We're talking about this trade war could basically convince China to stop backing U.S. policy in that region. And that means China would go back to trading with North Korea. There doesn't seem to be a master plan. It's just all these individual little neocon operatives saying we're going to go North Korea, we're going to poke at China, we're going to poke at Russia, we're going to do this. Now, last year, the number of uninsured Americans rose by 3.2 million. And that basically tells us that the Affordable Care Act was a complete and total failure in its stated purpose of making health care affordable to all Americans. Of course, we know what happened when it got rammed through Congress. Those Obamacare-compliant health insurance policies, the premiums went through the roof, and so did the deductibles. This was a giveaway to the health insurance industries in exchange for all that wonderful campaign money that they were paying out during the previous elections. It was just a giveaway. Let's just gouge the American people for a little more wealth for our cronies and our buddies and all of our friends here. But in terms of its stated purpose, it was a complete and utter failure. And I'm glad that the individual mandate has been removed, but look at all the people who fought that. And part of the reason is because Congress, members of Congress, are not required to have a blind trust the way the president is. And so they can invest in companies that benefit from the laws they pass. And then they will oppose any change to that law in order to maximize their profitability. In a way, it's almost a form of insider trading. And there was actually an attempt to pass a law specifically to forbid members of Congress from profiting from information they acquired in the course of their duties. Not too surprisingly, it lost in a landslide. Getting on over to Great Britain and Europe, a lot of stuff going on over there. Jacob Rees-Mogg's new Brexit job revealed. Eurosceptics are vowing to battle the cabinet. Now, I'm not going to get into the details here. What is coming on is apparently there is a growing movement for a hard Brexit. Everybody is just tired of this thing being dragged out, and Theresa May just giving more and more to the EU for permission to leave. But Great Britain doesn't need Brussels' permission to leave. That was written into the original European Union Compact. Anybody had a right to leave anytime they want. And the British subjects voted for Brexit against overwhelming election fraud, I might remind everybody. And the Remainers have been just trying to obfuscate the issue and trying to basically create a situation where everybody's going to say, well, let's have a second referendum. We'll try harder with the election fraud this time. Or, you know, there's no real reason. We'll be better off staying. They're trying to keep that stepping stone to the New World Order, one world government intact. And it is really starting to fall apart. Facebook apparently is expanding its investigation into whether Russian agents tried to influence the Brexit vote. Notice how Russia gets the blame for everything these days. The Brexit vote succeeded for the people of Britain. Oh, it must be Russia's fault. DNC emails leaked. No, it was Russia. Russia did that. Russia did all those bad things. And again, it's part of that demonization process that precedes war. And after that little alert that we got on Saturday, it's a very real thing around here all of a sudden. And by the way, like I think I mentioned this before, nobody around here is buying the story that it was simply an accident. And they're all very angry over that 38-minute delay. I think it was a test of how the public was going to respond, both here and in Japan. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We've got a caller, Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I was originally going to call in to comment on something I recently learned about Monsanto, but then you had to go and mention Obamacare.
Sorry.
So, let me share with everyone what we're going through here. I just recently had to come back, leave Homestead in Missouri to come back here to Georgia to take care of my mom. And I remember back in the early 2000s, leading all the way up to about 2008, now, my dad died in fall of 2008, before Obamacare was passed, okay? So we still had our old insurance. And for about 10 years, my dad received in-home nursing. And we never, ever, ever had a problem. Great insurance company, not going to mention their name because they really are a very good insurance company, and they're always good about paying, and we've never had a problem. But now, like I said, my dad passed away in fall of 2008 before Obamacare became law. But now my mother has been diagnosed with severe lung cancer. It's stage 4. It's terminal. And we're just now getting into the point where we're trying to figure out, we're just focusing on the comfort thing because there really isn't much else we can do.
Yes.
So we're trying to get her set up with in-home health care and such as that. And lo and behold, virtually every single in-home nursing care business in this area one that we used with my dad no longer accept our insurance. And the reason they gave is because they don't accept the standards by which Obamacare has set. Our insurance is Obamacare compliant, and they refuse to accept it. Now, ain't that something?
Yeah, it sounds, I've heard a lot of similar stories where people are spending more money to get these Obamacare compliant health insurance policies, only to find that along with the sky-high deductibles, that many of the healthcare providers in their area just don't want to deal with the paperwork.
Well, see, the thing is, my mom has had this insurance, was with this insurance company long before Obamacare ever came, in the late 1990s. So my mom's had this insurance policy for decades. But because when Obamacare became mandated, the insurance company went Obamacare compliant. And now home health care facilities around here will not accept these insurances anymore because they're Obamacare compliant, and they absolutely refuse to go there.
Yeah, I mean, this is really one of the reasons we should have gone single payer or have a single national health insurance system because, as you know, I've been taking Claire to medical care facilities over the last couple of weeks here, and we see taped on the door these signs saying, "We're sorry, we no longer accept insurance from blah, blah, blah," and there'll be a list of companies. And these health insurance companies are trying to make deals with all the healthcare providers, and sometimes the deals just don't work out. Sometimes there'll be a change, and it gets to be a point where the healthcare provider says it's more trouble than it's worth. And certainly if you look at the paperwork requirement for Obamacare, that is really the issue for most of them, is all of the added bookkeeping, because they have to hire people to take care of all the added paperwork. That runs up their costs.
Yeah, and see, and what people aren't understanding, especially people in Washington, God, I wish they'd pull their heads out of their derrieres and get some real serious reform going on here, or at least allow the insurance companies to go back to the way they used to be and start actually negotiating contracts and things like they used to do, because my mom cannot be left alone. She needs somebody here with her all day long, and unless I can get in-home nursing, guess what I cannot do? I can't go get a job.
Boy, that's a rock and a hard place. You know, the first thing that occurs to me is you might want to approach, do some research and see if there are any medical charities in your area that will look at your circumstance and say, we're going to provide the in-home care so that you can get a job. And I wish I had more information to share with you. Unfortunately, I don't. Also, we're going to have to let you go. Oh, no, we've got another minute. They changed the clock on me. I haven't updated the graphic. That would be the first place that I would start. When you
live in a little town like I do, of less than, I think we have less than 1,000 people, it's kind of hard to find. And
yeah.
It's pretty much a very poor county here in Georgia anyway. It's kind of hard to find any kind of charities, you know.
Is there any other?
Kind,
do you have any extended family?
Moms on
do you have any extended family, cousins, nieces, nephews?
Nope, it's just me and my mom.
Oh boy, that's really.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Okay, well now we're coming up on the commercial break, and I wish you luck. I wish you luck, and we're going to let you go here. Okay, we'll be back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take a phone call, then we're going to go back to some news here. Sherry in Texas. Aloha, Sherry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Thank you. I've been dying to ask this question. I know the guy who pressed the button couldn't undo the accidental press, but what I want to know is what prompted a button, any button, to be pressed in the first place? Well, what button was he supposed to press? Did he just accidentally sit on it, or what?
Well, it wasn't really a button. It wasn't really a button. It's a menu on a computer screen for this emergency communication system. And I actually saw a photo of the display, and whatever they paid for this software, it was way too much because it was one of the most primitive user interfaces I've ever seen. But they have a long list of things that you do, many of them with a lot of acronyms, and that may have been the problem. because you look down and you say, well, what does this actually mean? And it turns out that there are 2 menu items, and one is to test the missile warning message system, and right below it is to actually send it out. And the menu item for testing the missile message system doesn't say test. It's got some other acronym in front of it. And that's basically what happened, is he hit the wrong one. No, actually, it did say test. It did say test, but there was this acronym, and he just, there's so much to try and figure through. That's the official story, but right now, I don't believe that anymore.
I don't either.
First and foremost, because of that 38-minute window before they went on out and officially said, yes, it's a false alarm. And at this point, given that there was one right here in Hawaii, and then 2 days later there's one in Japan, I think it was actually testing what the public reaction would be to that message for some planning they're doing.
They called Trump a loose cannon, and he wasn't so loose, was he? I mean, he didn't respond if he got the warning at all himself. I mean, I'm kind of glad that I agree. They were kind of seeing what would happen. I think maybe. I mean, there's always a possibility. I can't believe it was so inept, that menu screen.
Trump didn't get the message. He was in Florida. Nobody outside of Hawaii got that warning. It was heard on, it was all across all the 8 islands, occupied islands of the state, but it didn't go to the mainland. And Trump's response to this was very reasonable. He simply pointed out this was a failure at the state agency level. No federal agency was involved. Now, the state agency tried to explain away the 38-minute delay, saying they were waiting for FEMA, but FEMA has since come on out now and said that, no, the state agencies are certainly authorized to immediately retract and correct erroneous messages. So we still don't know what was going on. But between the fact that it happened twice, here in Hawaii and Japan, and the 38-minute delay here was only 5 minutes in Japan, I think they were testing the public reaction.
Oh, I think so too. 100%. I think so. I wonder if he went to launch a missile and it didn't work, and then he got. Oh no, I think he was just whatever it is, it doesn't look very on the up and up for sure.
No, it doesn't.
Especially in Japan too, and I was worried about Japan too.
Had there been a real warning of a missile coming in from Pacific Command or FEMA, the sirens would have gone off at the same exact time that the messages appeared on TV and smartphones. And there obviously would have been breaking news headlines on certainly our local TV news.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah. Thank you for filling me in, because I've been dying to know about that. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I got to tell you, it was not pleasant to actually go through, although for Claire and I, it was really only about 5 minutes. But for a lot of other people, it just dragged on and on for half an hour. All right, we're going to let you go. Sure. Thank you for the call here. And before we take any more phone calls, I really do have to get some news in here. Yesterday we were talking about this story where the Department of Homeland Security was looking to see if they could lodge criminal charges against sanctuary cities that refused to cooperate with federal deportation efforts. And I questioned the wording there. Charges against sanctuary cities. I'm not sure exactly what that meant. Were they just, suing for damages or fines or anything like that? But today there's been a clarification. The Department of Homeland Security chief has basically come on out and said they are looking at criminal charges against elected officials from sanctuary cities. And in point of fact, there is ample room for them to file charges under Title VIII. Multiple charges, 1 count per illegal immigrant. And when you total up all those illegal immigrants, that's some serious jail time, probably longer than most of these people are going to be living. All right, let's take one more phone call from Milton in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, I was been thinking of a scenario as far as the draft went. My daughter at the beginning of the school year got a letter from the school that they could do a lockdown and they could take the children to an undisclosed place that not even the parents would know. Now, couldn't something like that with a lockdown, if they're saying, okay, you're not going home, we need you in the military?
Well, I think at some point, you know, it would have to be on a large scale to get a sizable military force, and at some point the parents are going to be up there in arms. It doesn't sound very practical to me. In fact, it sounds like the usual heavy-handed, over-the-top emergency planning by a school board that doesn't really know what they're doing. I can understand a school wanting to lock down the school and evacuate it completely. The part about taking the kids away to a location that's not even disclosed to the parents, that doesn't even make any sense to me.
But yeah, my daughter got a letter to that effect, an undisclosed place, and I said I'd be up in arms over that one.
Well, if you still have that letter, if you could scan it and email it to me, I would definitely take a look.
Okay, we'll do.
All right, thanks an awful lot.
That's pretty much about it, Michael.
All right, have a good day. We're going to let you go. I'm going to skip forward on the talking points because we're running out of time, and I want to get into some stuff that we need to talk about. Over in Uganda, doctors are saying that the eye bleeding fever is already an epidemic, and they're calling it the Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. So, again, yes, this is hemorrhagic. What's really weird about this is that they've identified it as pretty much the same, a very similar disease to that which wiped out much of the Aztecs. And they know about what wiped out the Aztecs because they were able to recover DNA of the pathogen from scrapings of the teeth of skulls. And so they know what killed off the Aztecs, and this appears to be very, very similar indeed. And right now, this illness, this hemorrhagic fever, has a 40% fatality rate, and because it is a virus, has no cure. And that's something people need to realize when we're looking at this or the flu outbreak. Doctors can cure bacterial diseases. They can't cure any viral disease. Zero. Zip. Nada. Because of the way they integrate into the cells and into the cell's DNA. Getting on back to the flu that's hit the United States of America, there's an article out here from the Daily Mail. Flu drives hospitals into war zone conditions, tents on the street in California, state of emergency in Alabama. Boston is using Gatorade to plug shortage of IV drips. And that's actually not as silly as it might sound. One of the good things about working on this show that I worked on called Off the Map was learning about some of the shortcuts that remote medicine has to do. And if you're out of IV saline drips, you can actually use coconut milk. And it works very good as an emergency hydrator. So Gatorade, yeah, guess so. But it's obvious that this illness, this flu epidemic, has already strained the medical system to its limits. Were it to turn into a panic, were we to see the Japan flu and the French flu show up here, this could get really, really nasty. We might see them having to call off World War III because everybody's too sick to fight. Meanwhile, over on the East Coast and across that part of the United States, there is a second U.S. winter storm. It's canceled more than 1,500 flights, and apparently 57 million East Coasters from Florida to Maine are hit with snow, ice, and freezing cold temperatures, and that means that our good, hardworking people at RBN are probably going to be seeing some of that in the next 2 days. So let's talk about computers for the remainder of the show here. Apparently, there is a message being sent around, and it's a text bomb. It works by sending iPhones, iPads, and Macs into a frenzy after a malicious web address is opened in Apple's Message app. And it's called the ChaiOS hack. Causes devices to crash and can delete all your messages, and it affects any device running iOS and Mac OS. They're promising a fix for the exploit somewhere down there in the future. Actually, I think the best solution would be to hunt down the people who are doing this, writing the malware. you know, even if it takes a Manhattan Project-sized effort, start hunting these people down and start having some mass hangings, and that will start to reverse the problem. But right now, the cyber criminals, they're living in wonderland. They write this stuff, they send it out, they have fun because they feel powerful destroying people's systems, or they're making huge amounts of money with ransomware, and nothing bad happens to them. They're more likely to be hit by a lightning bolt than get arrested for what they're doing. That has to change. Now, Oracle has told users of its Spark-powered platforms they may have the Spectre processor design flaw. And patches are coming soon. And just like all the other patches, it will slow down their computers. Just think what this Spectre and Meltdown have done. Our machines are now much slower than we paid for. And we're dealing with all these hacks and patches. We should have just been allowed to stay with all of our original XP machines. Apparently, another hospital got hit by ransomware, cost them $60,000. And until the ransom was paid and the ransomware unlocked, the staff was forced to keep notes with pencil and paper. Got to find these people here. Apparently, a security researcher has claimed that 500,000 Chrome users have been hit by 4 malicious browser extensions pushing click and SEO fraud. And Iceberg's Justin Warner and Mario DeTore spotted the extensions while investigating a spike in outbound traffic from a workstation in a customer's network. And the company claims the 4 extensions had more than 500,000 downloads in all. Pardon me. The extensions were Change HTTP Request Header, which is a legitimate capability to hide the browser type from trackers, and 3 apparently related to it, Nugle, custom logo for Google, Light Bookmarks, and Stickies, which is Chrome's equivalent to a Post-it note. Over in the world of Androids, another powerful spyware has been discovered called SkyGoFree. And apparently researchers are saying it's one of the most advanced Android spyware tools that gives hackers full control of the infected devices remotely. Sounds like something more a nation state would do. The Android spyware has been designed for targeted surveillance, and it's believed to have been targeting a large number of users in the past 4 years. Now, since 2014, the SkyGoFree implant has gained several novel features previously unseen in the wild, according to a report published by Kaspersky Labs. And these new features include location-based audio recording using the device's microphone, the use of Android accessibility services to steal WhatsApp messages, and the ability to connect infected devices to malicious Wi-Fi networks controlled by hackers. This feels like something coming out of either CIA or NSA to me. YouTube is now tightening the rules around which channels can be monetized. Your channel will have to have 4,000 hours of annual viewing time and over 1,000 subscribers, or you will not be allowed to make money off of it. Of course, YouTube does not allow us to monetize. They never have. Now, here's some good news. Here's some very good news. 22 state attorneys general have sued to block the net neutrality rollback. This is one of the first high-profile attempts to block the FCC's plan to allow Internet service providers to have for-pay fast lanes and to basically marginalize websites without a lot of money or websites that somebody doesn't like. And the lawsuit has been brought in front of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Court, asks the court to determine that the FCC's repeal is arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion under the law. The suit will also argue that the FCC wrongly reclassified broadband as a so-called Title I information service rather than a Title II service because of an erroneous and unreasonable interpretation of communication law. Basically, the FCC reclassified the Internet because they wanted to get around that common carrier designation. But now they're looking at a lawsuit. This could go all the way to the Supreme Court. So we may still have our free and open internet yet. Now, getting on back to the medical stuff here. The Daily Beast came out with a piece basically pointing out the state of Mississippi has the worst overall health in the nation. But because of government mandates, they have over 99.4% vaccine coverage starting in kindergarten. In other words, Mississippi is the unhealthiest state in America, but they have the best vaccination rate. Does it not make sense that something should be looked into here? Now, apparently back in 1979, the Mississippi Supreme Court eliminated the state's religious exemption to vaccination. And there are still 47 states that allow parents to basically say, no, you may not vaccinate my child. But we've been hearing all these stories about how people who are vaccinated for an illness come down with that illness. I'm wondering how many of the people suffering from flu in this country right now had that flu vaccine. They've already admitted it's completely ineffective. Maybe it's the source of the widespread infection. We don't know. We'll be right back with the last segment of our show after these few commercials. Hi, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And over in Pennsylvania, there's a state senator, Mike Fulmer, and he's seeking support for a law that would require medical professionals to obtain informed consent from parents prior to vaccination. This law would require they be told of the potential risks associated with the ingredients of vaccines, like aluminum, thimerosal, and peanut oil. And Fulmer says the present laws limit parental rights to refuse vaccines and violate the constitutional right of due process. He's also planning a resolution requesting Congress to repeal the 1986 National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act that protects vaccine makers from liability for vaccine injuries and blocks parents from suing for damages. I think it's a very good idea. Of course, the vaccine industry is going to lobby like crazy against it, but Senator Fulmer may find himself a rather surprising ally in this because, believe it or not, President Trump does not get the flu shot every year. And back in 2015, he explained why. He did an interview with Sirius XM's Opie and Jim Norton, and he basically said that when he was very young, he got the flu shot. It made him very sick. In fact, he got really sick from it, and he vowed never to do it again. So we know a lot of people who get the flu after getting the flu shot. And we know why, because the attenuated pathogens can often revert to full potency once they're in the body. Now, getting on back to this issue of aluminum, a lot of people are talking about thimerosal, the damage that it can cause, and it does, but there's also aluminum salts that are used as adjuvants. Now, adjuvants are there to provoke an immune response, to literally annoy your body so it will respond and produce antibodies to the included pathogen. But what happens to those adjuvants after the shot is all over? Well, nobody's been paying attention to that. I think the epidemic of peanut anaphylaxis is from the practice of using peanut oil as an adjuvant in vaccines. We know that there is definitely indications of a link between the mercury-based preservative thimerosal and autism, which is also at epidemic stages in this country. And now there is apparently an investigation underway that is looking at what those accumulating aluminum salts do to brain tissue. And there is known to be a link between aluminum and Alzheimer's disease. So these vaccines are incredibly dangerous. They're unproven. Every year they're making apologies for why they don't work, and yet more and more governments are basically saying, you will buy this product, you will stick it in your kid, you don't have a choice anymore. The vaccine companies need the money, and we need to prove that how butch we are, that we are in complete control of you. And you look at all the damage that has been done in the name of profits for the medical industrial complex. It's disgusting. Okay, there's the music. I got to take Claire to the doctor. We'll be back here tomorrow on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, first of all, stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got a lot of good things to share with you. And second of all, take what you learn here, share it with other people. Don't use the corporate social media. They're already filtering it all. Just go out and talk to ordinary people and let them know they're not alone in their own doubts. Because those doubts, that fear that they might be alone, is why so many stay silent. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.